Agenda 21 is a non-binding, voluntarily implemented action plan of the United Nations with regard to sustainable development. It is a product of the UN Conference on Environment and Development held in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, in 1992. It is an action agenda for the UN, other multilateral organizations, and individual governments around the world that can be executed at local, national, and global levels. The 21 in Agenda 21 refers to the 21st century. It has been affirmed and modified at subsequent UN conferences. Structure and contents: Agenda 21 is a 300-page document divided into 40 chapters that have been grouped into 4 sections. Section NI, Social and Economic Dimensions, is directed toward combating poverty, especially in developing countries, changing consumption patterns, promoting health, achieving a more sustainable population, and sustainable settlement in decision-making. Section A2, Conservation and Management of Resources for Development, includes atmospheric protection, combating deforestation, protecting fragile environments, conservation of biological diversity, control of pollution and the management of biotechnology, and radioactive wastes. Section A3, Strengthening the role of major groups, includes the roles of children and youth, women, NGOs, local authorities, business and industry, and workers. And strengthening the role of indigenous peoples, their communities, and farmers. Section A4, Means of implementation. Implementation includes science, technology transfer, education, international institutions and financial mechanisms. Development and evolution. The full text of Agenda 21 was made public at the UN Conference on Environment and Development, held in Rio de Janeiro on June 13, 1992, where 178 governments voted to adopt the program. The final text was the result of drafting, consultation, and negotiation, beginning in 1989 and culminating at the 2-week conference. Rio+5, in 1997, the UN General Assembly held a special session to appraise the status of Agenda 21. The Assembly recognized progress is uneven, and identified key trends, including increasing globalization, widening inequalities in income, and continued deterioration of the global environment. A new General Assembly resolution promised further action. Rio+10. The Johannesburg Plan of Implementation, agreed at the World Summit on Sustainable Development, affirmed UN commitment to full implementation of Agenda 21, alongside achievement of the Millennium Development Goals and other international agreements. Agenda 21 for Culture. The first World Public Meeting on Culture, held in Porto Alegre, Brazil, in 2002, came up with the idea to establish guidelines for local cultural policies, something comparable to what Agenda 21 was for the environment. They are to be included in various subsections of Agenda 21 and will be carried out through a wide range of sub-programs beginning with G8 countries. Rio+20. In 2012, at the United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development, the attending members reaffirmed their commitment to Agenda 21 in their outcome document called The Future We Want. 180 leaders from nations participated. Implementation. The Commission on Sustainable Development acts as a high-level forum on sustainable development and has acted as preparatory committee for summits and sessions on the implementation of Agenda 21. The UN Division for Sustainable Development acts as the secretariat to the Commission and works within the context of Agenda 21. Implementation by member states remains voluntary, and its adoption has varied. Local level. The implementation of Agenda 21 was intended to involve action at international, national, regional and local levels. Some national and state governments have legislated or advised that local authorities take steps to implement the plan locally, as recommended in Chapter 28 of the document. These programs are often known as Local Agenda 21, or LA21. For example, in the Philippines, the plan is Philippines Agenda 21. The group, ICLEI Local Governments for Sustainability, formed in 1990. Today its members come from 1,200 cities, towns, and counties in 70 countries and is widely regarded as a paragon of Agenda 21 implementation. In other countries, opposition to Agenda 21's ideas has surfaced to varied extents. In some cases, opposition has been legislated into several states limiting or forbidding the participation and/or funding of local government activities that support Agenda 21. Europe turned out to be the continent where LA 21 was best accepted and most implemented. In Sweden, for example, all local governments have implemented a local Agenda 21 initiative. National level, the Union Department of Economic and Social Affairs Division for Sustainable Development monitors and evaluates progress, nation by nation, towards the adoption of Agenda 21, and makes these reports available to the public on its website. Australia, for example, is a signatory to Agenda 21 and 88 of its municipalities subscribe to ICLEI, an organisation that promotes Agenda 21 globally. Australia's membership is second only to that of the United States. European countries generally possess well-documented Agenda 21 statuses. France, whose national government, along with 14 cities, is a signatory, boasts nationwide programs supporting Agenda 21. The French activist group Nouvelle Force announced in March 2012 that they viewed Agenda 21 as a sham. In Africa, national support for Agenda 21 is strong and most countries are signatories. But support is often closely tied to environmental challenges specific to each country. For example, in 2002 Sam Nujima, who was then president of Namibia, spoke about the importance of adhering to Agenda 21 at the 2002 Earth Summit, noting that as a semi-arid country, Namibia sets a lot of store in the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification. Furthermore, there is little mention of Agenda 21 at the local level in indigenous media. Only major municipalities in sub-Saharan African countries are members of ICLEI. Agenda 21 participation in North African countries mirrors that of Middle Eastern countries, with most countries being signatories but little to no adoption on the local government level. Countries in sub-Saharan Africa and North Africa generally have poorly documented Agenda 21 status reports. By contrast, South Africa's participation in Agenda 21 mirrors that of modern Europe, with 21 city members of ICLEI and support of Agenda 21 by national-level government. Specific countries: United States. The national focal point in the United States is the Division Chief for Sustainable Development and Multilateral Affairs, Office of Environmental Policy, Bureau of Oceans and International Environmental and Scientific Affairs, U.S. Department of State. A June 2012 poll of 1,300 United States voters by the American Planning Association found that 9% supported Agenda 21, 6% opposed it, and 85% thought they didn't have enough information to form an opinion. Support: the United States is a signatory country to Agenda 21, but because Agenda 21 is a legally non-binding statement of intent and not a treaty, the United States Senate was not required to hold a formal debate or vote on it. It is therefore not considered to be law under Article 6 of the United States Constitution. President George Bush was one of the 178 heads of government who signed the final text of the agreement at the Earth Summit in 1992, and in the same year Representatives Nancy Pelosi, Eliot Engel and William Broomfield spoke in support of United States House of Representatives Concurrent Resolution 353, supporting implementation of Agenda 21 in the United States. In the United States, over 528 cities are members of ICLEI, an international sustainability organization that helps to implement the Agenda 21 and local Agenda 21 concepts across the world. The United States has nearly half of the ICLEI's global membership of 1,200 cities promoting sustainable development at a local level. The United States also has one of the most comprehensively documented Agenda 21 status reports. In response to the opposition, Don Knapp, U.S. spokesman for the ICLEI, has said sustainable development is not a top-down conspiracy from the UN, but a bottom-up push from local governments. The Arizona Chamber of Commerce and Industry successfully lobbied against an anti-sustainable development bill in 2012, arguing it would be bad for business as it could drive away corporations that have embraced sustainable development. Opposition. During the last decade, opposition to Agenda 21 has increased within the United States at the local, state, and federal levels. The Republican National Committee has adopted a resolution opposing Agenda 21, and the Republican Party platform stated that we strongly reject the UN Agenda 21 as erosive of American sovereignty. Several state and local governments have considered or passed motions and legislation opposing Agenda 21. Alabama became the first state to prohibit government participation in Agenda 21. Many other states, including Arizona, are drafting, and close to passing legislation to ban Agenda 21. Activists, some of whom have been associated with the Tea Party movement by the New York Times and the Huffington Post, have said that Agenda 21 is a conspiracy by the United Nations to deprive individuals of property rights. Columnists in The Atlantic have linked opposition to Agenda 21 to the property rights movement in the United States. Glenn Beck co-wrote a dystopian novel entitled Agenda 21. See also, Ecologically Sustainable Development, Earth Check, Earth Summit, Education for Sustainable Development, Global Map, ICLEI Local Governments for Sustainability USA, International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives, Man and the Biosphere Program, Millennium Development Goals, National Strategy for a Sustainable America, References. Further reading, Lenz, Ryan. Anti-Government Conspiracy Theorists Rail Against Union's Agenda 21 Program. Intelligence Reporter, Zelchuk, Scott. Rothschild, Richard. UN Agenda 21, Coming to a Neighborhood Near You. American Thinker, Earth Summit 2012, External links, Agenda 21 text, United Nations Sustainable Development Knowledge Platform.